Before we dive into the heart of today's story, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. It tells the algorithm you love tales of courage, cosmic dread, and the wild, unpredictable genius of humankind. Now sit back and imagine this: a galaxy trembling under the shadow of a single creature, and a human who dares to challenge it. The Galactic Council had gathered in silence, a silence so dense it pressed against the lungs of every delegate in the chamber. Light from the twin suns of Alpha Centauri bled through the great crystal dome, casting fractured colors over the long obsidian table where 23 of the most powerful species in existence sat. They had come to discuss annihilation. In the center of the room, a holographic recording flickered to life. The projection showed a fleet of Tarkhan dreadnoughts, each the size of a continent, maneuvering in formation. Then, one by one they were torn apart. Not by a fleet. Not by a weapon. By something alive. The chamber lights dimmed as the figure appeared, tall, skeletal, its armored hide shimmering with biometal scales. It moved with terrifying purpose, tearing through the Tarkhan command ships with claws that cut through hull and vacuum as if both were paper. The creature's roar was transmitted through the void, an infrasonic tremor that made the delegates flinch even now, decades after the event. When the recording ended, no one spoke for several seconds. "The Ravager of Orphean 9, rasped the Zircon ambassador, his carapace plates clicking. 5 civilizations wiped out. 20 billion dead. 1 being. It must be ended." A dozen voices agreed, voices belonging to races that had survived extinction events and cosmic wars. Yet none had faced what they had just seen. Only one delegate had not joined the chorus. Captain Marcus Hale sat back in his chair, human insignia gleaming faintly on the shoulder of his black uniform. He was broad-shouldered but not imposing, calm but unflinchingly alert. His eyes, a washed-out steel blue, held none of the fear the others displayed. He'd seen monsters before. He'd fought wars on the blood-red sands of Mars and against raiders in the Europa Belt. But something in that recording stirred not terror in him, but curiosity. "You call him a monster," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady enough to draw attention without raising volume. "But have any of you asked why he kills?" The ambassador of Velthor hissed. "Why? He is a predator. His kind were engineered by the Premarch Forges to cleanse galaxies. You cannot reason with a weapon." Marcus's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Weapons don't choose their targets." "He did." That sparked a murmur through the chamber. The council chair, an ancient being of light and crystalline form, pulsed in color as it spoke. "Human delegate, the Ravager is no sentient agent of reason. It is a natural disaster. You suggest negotiation?" "I suggest understanding," Marcus replied. "You think you can end this by throwing more fleets at him? You'll only feed the legend. You'll make him a martyr of fear." The Zircon slammed his claws against the table. "And what do you propose, human? Tea and philosophy with a devourer of worlds?" Marcus met the insectoid's glare without blinking. "No. I propose we capture him." Laughter erupted from several seats. The council chair's crystal body dimmed in disbelief. "You would capture the being that consumed the dreadnought armada of Tarkhan? With what? Human ships." "With human will," Marcus said. "Your species see predators as apex threats. We see them as challenges to overcome. Every world that tried to kill us, storms, beasts, starvation, we didn't run from them. We adapted. We turned survival into art." The laughter faded into silence. A few ambassadors leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. Marcus stood, triggering a small hologram above his wrist console. The projection displayed schematics. A ship, sleek and predatory, bristling with magnetogravitic hooks and cloaking arrays. "Project Aegis," he said. "Designed to contain energy signatures larger than any living organism yet recorded. We built it for him." The chair's voice sharpened. "This is madness." "Maybe," Marcus admitted, shutting down the projection. "But if he's as smart as he is strong, maybe madness is what it'll take to reach him." The council dissolved into argument, languages overlapping, tones rising. Marcus didn't bother to speak again. He already knew they'd vote for extermination. The council always chose fear over understanding. When the final verdict was announced, complete eradication of the Ravager species, Marcus didn't flinch. He only turned to the human envoy behind him, a quiet nod passing between them. They had expected this. Humanity's habit of standing alone in the dark was an old one. As he left the chamber, the Velthor ambassador hissed after him, "Your species will die screaming beside him, human." Marcus paused at the door and looked back, half lit by the dying light of the chamber. "Maybe," he said, but at least we'll die trying to understand what we fear. The doors slid shut behind him with a whisper like a blade leaving its sheath. Outside the council's orbiting citadel, space stretched endlessly, indifferent and cold. Yet deep within the Orion abyss, where even light hesitated, something stirred. Korthal, the ravager of Orphean 9, opened his eyes. The void reflected back twin spheres of shifting violet fire. Around him lay the carcasses of ships, drifting silently, the remnants of his last hunt. His breathing echoed through the vacuum, a sound that wasn't sound, a resonance that bent nearby matter. He felt something, an unfamiliar presence brushing his mind, faint, deliberate. Not fear. Not challenge. Curiosity. He tilted his head, claws flexing as the sensation deepened. Somewhere, far beyond the nebular mists, a human heartbeat pulsed against the fabric of the stars. Korthal smiled, or something like it, and the motion made the void tremble. "A mind that seeks me," he whispered in a voice that rippled through the wreckage. "Then come, little fire. Let us see if your courage outlives your world." Far away, aboard the departing shuttle, Marcus Hale looked up at the faint shimmer of the Orion sector through the viewport. His reflection caught the starlight just enough to glint like a predator's eye. He didn't know yet what he'd face out there, only that he would go. Because if humanity feared the galaxy's strongest predator, then it was time someone showed the galaxy what humanity's strongest will look like. And in the distant dark, something ancient began to turn its gaze toward Earth. The Orion abyss was a graveyard of forgotten wars. It stretched like a wound across space, filled with debris that shimmered faintly under dying starlight. Ships drifted half-buried in cosmic dust, hulls punctured, skeletons of once mighty fleets entangled like bones in a shallow grave. It was here that Captain Marcus Hale brought Aegis I, the first human ship ever to fly into the abyss willingly. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the engines and the occasional burst of static from failing sensors. The crew moved with disciplined efficiency, their movements tight and economical. Lieutenant Rhea Voss, the ship's tactical officer, adjusted the display of magnetic fields. "Still nothing on long-range scanners, Captain. The interference here is unnatural." Marcus didn't look up from his command seat. "He's close. We're not hunting a ghost. We're inside his den." Rhea hesitated. "Permission to speak freely?" "Always. Sir, every race that's come here died screaming. Even the Council's hunters. If he's what they say he is, how do you plan to trap him?" Marcus's eyes flicked to the faint shimmer on the forward screen, where distorted gravitational waves rippled through the dark. "By showing him something he's never seen before." "And what's that?" "A human who isn't afraid to look back." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken dread. Outside the viewport, a broken dreadnought rolled slowly through the dust clouds, its hull still bearing the insignia of Tarkon Prime, the civilization Korthal had erased. They advanced deeper into the void, sensors struggling against the chaos. Marcus studied the flickering display. It wasn't just wreckage. The debris formed patterns as though placed deliberately, a labyrinth built from destruction. "He's marking territory," Marcus murmured. "A hunter's perimeter. He wants us to know we've entered it." Then the temperature dropped. Lights dimmed, not from power loss but from something else, something draining the energy itself. The comms officer whispered, "Captain, we're being scanned." Marcus stood. "Lock down systems. Don't respond." A voice, ancient and resonant, crawled through the static. It wasn't transmitted through speakers, it vibrated through the hull, through the marrow of everyone aboard. "You came to find me, little fire," it said. "You burn bright, but you die fast." Half the crew froze. Rhea's hands trembled over her controls. Marcus only stared into the dark. "Korthal," he said softly, the name steady as a promise. "I'm here to talk." A low rumble, half growl, half laughter, filled the ship. "Talk? That is what prey does before the scream." A shadow moved outside, a shape vast enough to eclipse the stars. Biometal scales caught the dim light, and a pulse of violet energy rippled through the void. "Brace!" Marcus shouted. The ship shuddered violently as something struck its hull. Systems went red, alarms blaring. In the chaos, Marcus's command voice cut through the noise. "Deploy the field nodes." Rhea obeyed instantly, triggering the Aegis trap sequence. Dozens of small drones shot out from the ship, forming a shifting web of energy that laced through the surrounding debris. The ship's magnetic core flared bright as the trap activated, a pulsating cage of graviton energy. Through the viewport they saw him fully now. Korthal was monstrous and beautiful, his form both flesh and living alloy, wings of energy unfolding behind him like molten metal. His eyes burned like small suns. He struck again, claws scraping across the hull, tearing through plating but not penetrating the core. The ship groaned under the force. Rhea gasped. "We can't hold him." Marcus raised a hand. "Wait." He accessed the neural interface at his wrist, linking directly with the ship's emitter. The system flashed a warning, "Unverified brain link." He ignored it. "Captain, what are you doing?" "Making contact." The neural bridge activated, and for a moment Marcus felt his consciousness pulled from his body. The ship vanished. The stars melted away. He stood, if standing meant anything, in an ocean of void. And there, before him, Korthal loomed, far larger than any physical scale could measure. Marcus didn't flinch. "You're not a god," he said. "You're something that forgot what it means to be alive." Korthal tilted his head, intrigued. "You invade my mind and insult me? Your courage is madness." "Maybe. But I know what it's like to lose everything. To fight so long you forget why." The Predator's form flickered. Marcus saw flashes, memories not his own. The burning skies of Orphean 9, the betrayal of creators who forged his kind as weapons, the endless killing that followed. "You were made to destroy," Marcus said quietly. "But you chose to keep killing after they were gone. Why?" Korthal's voice was a whisper and a thunderclap all at once. "Because it was all I knew." Marcus stepped closer, his projection flickering within the void. "Then it's time you learned something new." The field outside the ship flared. Korthal roared, twisting in physical space as the Aegis network pulsed around him. The graviton cage constricted, lines of energy forming geometric sigils that burned against his biometal skin. "You think you can bind me?" he snarled. "No chain can hold hunger." "Maybe not hunger," Marcus said, his voice echoing across both realities. "But willpower can starve it." He pushed every ounce of neural focus into the link. The trap adjusted its resonance, shifting from brute force to frequency mimicry, matching Korthal's own energy rhythm. For the first time the Predator staggered, momentarily disoriented. Marcus saw his chance. He projected one last image into the shared mind space, Earth, blue and fragile, spinning in sunlight. Not as prey but as home. Korthal froze. The image pulsed in his mind, oceans, life, the chaos of human emotion. Love. Defiance. "What is this place?" he growled. "Where I come from," Marcus said. "Where everything fights to live but not to destroy." The Predator's massive form trembled. The energy around him flared, then dimmed. He didn't roar. He didn't strike. He simply stopped. In the physical world, the tremors ceased. The Aegis field stabilized. The scanners confirmed containment. Marcus collapsed back into his body, gasping for breath. Rhea rushed to his side. "Captain, we have him, he's in stasis. Contained." He opened his eyes, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. Then humanity just did what the galaxy couldn't. On the main screen, Korthal's body floated motionless within the glowing cage, eyes closed but still burning faintly beneath his lids. Rhea whispered almost reverently, "You actually caught him." Marcus leaned back in his chair, voice quiet, almost thoughtful. "No, not yet. I just gave him a reason to stop running." Outside, the Orion abyss grew still, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy's strongest predator slept, and in the silence that followed, humanity's next great danger began to dream. The containment chamber was a world within a world, a sphere of reinforced alloy and living glass suspended above Earth's atmosphere. Inside it, light bent in strange ways, refracting off invisible fields that shifted like a heartbeat. The being at its center sat motionless, massive and silent, his form encased in layers of adaptive restraints that adjusted to every twitch of energy his body released. Korthal, the Ravager of Orphean 9, had not spoken since his capture. Outside the chamber, Captain Marcus Hale stood before the observation window. His reflection looked older in the sterile glow, eyes shadowed, jaw set, a man worn down by the enormity of what he'd done. Behind him, Lieutenant Rhea Voss scrolled through a stream of data projected from her wrist pad. "Vital patterns are stable," she reported. "He's metabolizing slower than expected. If he's conscious, he's conserving energy." Marcus nodded. "He's thinking." Rhea frowned. "You make that sound worse than if he were fighting." "It is," Marcus said simply. "Fighting's instinct. Thinking means he's adapting." They both looked at the creature inside. Even at rest, Korthal radiated pressure, a presence that made the air feel thicker. His breathing was deep and measured, but his eyes were open now, luminous and watching. "You realize," Rhea murmured, "if the council finds out you kept him alive, they'll come for you." Marcus didn't look away. "They'll come anyway. Fear always does." For several minutes neither spoke. Then without warning the lights in the chamber dimmed. The restraints flickered. "Containment field's destabilizing," Rhea said sharply. Marcus raised a hand. "Hold." The systems fluctuated, but instead of breaking free, Korthal spoke. The voice resonated through the intercoms, deep and resonant. "Why am I still breathing?" Marcus approached the glass. "Because I chose not to kill you." The predator's head tilted, eyes narrowing. "Mercy from prey?" "No," Marcus replied. "A challenge. You've spent millennia proving you can destroy. Now prove you can stop." Korthal's gaze burned brighter. "You want me to cage myself. I want you to understand what you've never had to, control." The alien was silent for a long time. Then a low growl reverberated through the chamber. "Control is weakness. Then why haven't you killed me?" Korthal's eyes flicked toward him, something flickering in their depths, something that wasn't rage. "Curiosity," he admitted. "Good," Marcus said quietly. "That's how learning begins." Days turned into weeks. Each day Marcus visited, alone, despite Rhea's protests and command warnings from Earth's military. He spoke to Korthal about humanity, about war, endurance, and the maddening persistence that kept his species alive against all odds. Korthal listened, sometimes with contempt, sometimes with fascination. "You slaughter your own kind," Korthal said once. "And you claim to be evolved." Marcus leaned against the glass. "We did. Then we learned why it wasn't worth it. And you think I can learn the same?" "I think anyone can. Even a monster." That word, monster, echoed for days afterward. Korthal began asking questions instead of making threats. He wanted to understand pain, love, defiance, and why humanity fought for ideals that had no logical value. When Marcus described soldiers who had thrown themselves into hopeless battles to save others, Korthal was silent for a long time. Then he said, almost to himself, "To die for something beyond oneself. That is, unfamiliar." One night the alarms blared. Marcus ran to the control deck, finding Rhea shouting over the chaos. "Security breach. Council assassins, 3 ships, cloaked approach." Before Marcus could respond, the first explosion rocked the station. The chamber's hull sealed automatically, cutting Korthal off from view. Rhea pulled up the tactical feed. "They're targeting containment. If they destroy him, they erase the evidence you kept him alive." "Not if I stop them." Marcus grabbed a sidearm and sprinted down the corridor. The station trembled again, power flickering. He reached the docking bay just as armored figures breached the airlock. Alien mercenaries, weapons humming with plasma light, stormed inside. Marcus fired first, dropping one before the rest returned fire. Energy bolts scorched the walls. He dove behind cover, returning shots with controlled precision. 2 went down. 1 closed in, massive, armored, fast. Marcus barely rolled aside as a blade struck where his chest had been. Then the lights died completely. A voice like thunder rolled through the station. "You threaten my prey?" Every mercenary froze. From the shattered chamber above, light burst outward. Containment shattered not by explosion but by choice. Korthal descended like a shadow made of lightning, claws glowing with raw energy. He moved too fast for eyes to follow, tearing through the invaders without hesitation. Metal screamed, flesh vaporized, and in moments the bay was silent except for the echo of his breath. Marcus stood slowly, the glow of emergency lights painting the scene in red. "You broke containment." Korthal turned, towering over him. "You were mine to end. No one else." Marcus holstered his weapon. "So you protected me." Korthal's head tilted again, confusion flickering across his alien features. "I destroyed to prevent destruction." "Is that protection?" "It's a start," Marcus said. For a long moment, predator and man stared at one another through the drifting smoke. The distance between them felt smaller than it ever had. When reinforcements finally arrived, Korthal didn't resist the reactivation of containment. He stepped back into the chamber willingly, eyes never leaving Marcus. Later, when reports were filed and the dead buried, Rhea confronted Marcus in the command corridor. "He saved your life. You know what that means." Marcus nodded. "It means he made a choice." "And now," she asked, "what happens when he makes the next one?" He looked back toward the observation deck where the Ravager rested once more in the soft glow of containment. The creature's eyes opened as if sensing his gaze, and for the first time, Marcus saw no hatred in them, only a strange, unspoken recognition. He answered quietly, now he decides what kind of being he wants to be. Outside, Earth revolved slowly beneath the station, blue and fragile against the darkness. And somewhere in that vast silence, a line had been crossed, between captor and captive, between fear and understanding. Corthal closed his eyes again, a whisper escaping the static of the chamber's audio feed. You are my prey, no longer human. You are my purpose. Marcus stood frozen at the words, their weight heavier than any victory. He turned away, unaware that those same words would one day reshape the fate of the galaxy itself. The first sign of war came as static. It began as a soft distortion in Earth's orbital channels, harmless at first, then deepened into a low, pulsing interference that drowned out communication across every frequency. By the time the signal reached command, the truth was already visible from orbit. Thousands of signatures, clustered at the edge of the solar system, burning like a field of angry suns. The Galactic Council had come. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the observation deck of the Aegis station, watching the long-range display draw in the fleet. It was larger than any military force humanity had ever faced. Armadas from 20 races, unified under one decree. Earth was harboring the Ravager. And for that, the planet was to be erased. Behind Marcus, Rhea Voss spoke in a clipped voice, each word hard-won against disbelief. Council broadcast confirmed. They're invoking Edict 9, Planetary Cleansing Protocol. They intend to sterilize the system. Marcus turned from the glass, his expression unreadable. How long before they're in range? 6 hours? Maybe less. The room was silent for a moment. Officers exchanged glances, fear disguised as professionalism. Then Marcus said, prepare evacuation orders for civilian orbitals. Send encrypted to the lunar base in the Martian colonies. We'll buy them time. Rhea hesitated. Sir, they won't stop at orbitals. They'll burn the atmosphere. I know, Marcus said. That's why we're not surrendering. At the far end of the deck, a deep vibration rolled through the station. The temperature shifted slightly, a hum building beneath their feet. Everyone turned as the containment bay opened. Corthal emerged, no longer bound, no longer passive. His frame filled the corridor, towering, armored, luminous with energy that shimmered like molten silver. The lights dimmed as he moved, not from malfunction but from his very presence consuming the space around him. Rhea's hand went instinctively to her weapon. He shouldn't be free. Marcus lifted a hand. He's not an enemy anymore. Corthal's voice was calm, almost solemn. They come to kill your world because of me. Yes, Marcus said. And they'll keep coming until they think we're extinct. Then they will learn what extinction means, Corthal growled. Marcus looked up at him, unflinching. We fight together. Not as predator and prey, but as allies. Corthal studied him for a long, silent moment. Then he nodded, a slow tilt of his massive head. Then grant me a weapon worthy of war. Within hours, the Aegis engineers worked under red alert, fusing alien and human technologies. From the chamber's forge emerged something neither entirely machine nor flesh. The Aegis armor, a biometal exosuit grown from Corthal's own energy signatures, interlaced with human railgun arrays and energy conduits. When he stepped into it, it fused to him like a second skin. Outside, the enemy fleet broke through the Kuiper line. The first wave entered range and the battle began. Human ships, smaller, slower but agile, swarmed through the dark, firing plasma torpedoes that barely scratched the alien dreadnoughts. Their enemies moved in perfect formation, cold and efficient. Within minutes, half the defense line was gone. Then a new signature appeared. Massive. Radiant. Moving faster than sensors could track. Corthal struck from behind the moon's shadow, his armor flaring like a newborn star. Energy wings spread wide, propelling him forward at impossible velocity. He tore through the lead warships, splitting their hulls open with kinetic shockwaves. Railgun fire followed from the human fleet, guided by his trajectory. Rhea's voice filled the command channel. He's cutting a path through their formation. They can't lock on. Marcus's tone was calm but fierce. Stay on him. Use his energy signature as our shield. The battlefield turned into chaos. The combined fleet's formation fractured under the onslaught. Corthal moved like a living storm, hurling fragments of broken ships into enemy fire, turning destruction into weaponry. Each roar from him echoed through the comms, not as sound but as pressure, shaking the metal bones of every vessel. Still, the Council forces adapted quickly. The Velthor command ship repositioned and unleashed its doomsday weapon, a solar lance capable of vaporizing continents. The beam lanced through the void, aimed directly at Earth. Marcus's instincts moved before thought. Redirect all ships, intercept that beam. Aegis 1 accelerated beyond safe limits, its reactor screaming. Rhea shouted through the static, "You won't make it in time." Marcus didn't answer. The view through the cockpit filled with the rising glow of the lance. He pushed the engines harder, systems overloading. At the last second, his ship cut across the beam's path, redirecting it just enough to scatter across the upper atmosphere. The sky above Earth burned gold. The shockwave tore through Aegis 1, splitting the hull. Marcus was thrown against his harness, alarms wailing. "Corthal, finish it," he gasped into the comm. Through the smoke and static, Corthal's reply came, low and furious. "You would die for this world." "For all of them," Marcus whispered. Something in that answer ignited the Predator's rage. Corthal launched himself toward the Council flagship, energy bleeding from his armor in streams of violet light. The flagship's weapons turned toward him, hundreds of cannons firing in synchronized fury. Each blast struck, but he did not fall. He drove forward through the fire, through the storm, until he reached the ship's core. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer that of a killer, it was that of judgment itself. "You sought to erase life. You will learn the cost." He unleashed everything. The Aegis armor flared white-hot, channeling every ounce of his energy into one catastrophic release. Space bent. The flagship imploded, dragging half the fleet with it. The explosion bloomed silently across the stars, beautiful and terrible. Rhea stared at the readouts in disbelief. He destroyed them all. Static crackled. Then Corthal's voice, weakened but steady, "Earth endures." The human fleet regrouped, scattered survivors pulling back from the wreckage. The Council's remaining ships, crippled and terrified, retreated beyond the system's edge. Marcus's ship drifted, its hull in tatters. Life support failing. Through the viewport, the explosion's glow reflected in his eyes, fading into the quiet dark. Corthal found him there, reaching through the wreckage with claws that now trembled from exhaustion. He pulled the shattered cockpit open and lifted Marcus into his hands like something fragile. "You fought with a heart greater than any weapon," Corthal said softly. Marcus managed a faint smile. "You finally sound human." The Predator looked down at him, the light of battle fading from his armor. "No," he said. "I sound alive." As he carried Marcus toward Earth, the debris of war drifted silently behind them. For the first time in eons, the Predator who had devoured civilizations did not hunger for death. And as the two figures disappeared into the blue shimmer of Earth's upper atmosphere, the galaxy watched in stunned silence, realizing that the creature it had feared for centuries was no longer its nightmare, but its warning. The ocean shimmered beneath a bruised dawn, the horizon painted in streaks of gold and ash. Earth had survived, but the scars were everywhere. Cities rebuilt from glass and metal, skyways crawling with new vessels, and at the heart of it all, a statue in the capital's plaza. A human and a towering alien standing side by side. Humanity called it the Accord Monument. To them it was a promise. To Corthal it was a burden. He stood at the base of that monument now, cloaked beneath a synthetic mantle to disguise his massive frame. Humans bustled around him, laughing, rebuilding, moving forward as they always did. Resilience, he had learned, was humanity's greatest weapon. But as the wind carried the scent of burning fuel and ocean salt, Corthal's gaze remained fixed on the sky. Somewhere beyond it, the remnants of the Galactic Council were stirring. A familiar voice broke his silence. "You look ridiculous in that cloak." Marcus Hale approached, his gait slower than before, the mechanical brace on his leg humming faintly with each step. He had survived the Aegis crash through some miracle, or perhaps through Corthal's intervention, but the war had taken much from him. Still, his eyes burned with the same iron conviction. Corthal glanced down at him. "Humans stare less when I wear it." Marcus smirked. "They stare because you're 10 feet tall and glow faintly in daylight, not because of your wardrobe." For a moment, silence settled between them, comfortable, familiar. Then Marcus's tone darkened. "You felt it too, haven't you?" The council regrouping. Corthal nodded slowly. "Fragments of their fleets have merged with the Dominion clans. They seek retribution. They call me the betrayer, now. And Earth." Marcus asked. "They call you my accomplices." Marcus sighed, glancing toward the sunrise. "Then they're right." Reports had already begun filtering in from the outer colonies, raids, sabotage, whispers of an invasion force gathering beyond the Perseus Rim. Humanity's defenses were growing stronger, but they were not yet ready for another full-scale assault. Korthal knew it, and so did Marcus. "You think you can stop them alone?" Marcus said quietly. "I must," Korthal replied, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "This war was born from my existence. It will end with it." Marcus turned sharply. "Don't give me that noble martyr act. We fought together once, we can do it again. You nearly died last time." "I lived," Marcus shot back. "That's what humans do. We live even when the universe tries to bury us." Korthal looked down at him, eyes glowing faintly. "You speak as if death fears you." "It should," Marcus said with a grin. The air between them tightened with the weight of shared memory, battlefields painted in fire, sacrifice made in silence, friendship forged in chaos. Then the sky answered their unspoken tension with a sound neither had wanted to hear again. A deep, resonant tremor rippled across the atmosphere. Birds scattered. The horizon flickered. In the sky above, clouds split open in a jagged tear of light. Through it, something vast emerged, a wormhole pulse, bleeding energy. The invasion had begun. Marcus's comm implant flared to life. "Command to all units, unidentified vessels emerging above the Indian Ocean. Multiple signatures, Council class." He didn't wait for more. "Ria's in command now," he said, already moving. "If we're going to survive this, we need to intercept them before they hit orbit." Korthal removed his cloak, revealing the faint, crystalline armor that had reformed along his skin. His power, long dormant, hummed back to life like a waking god. "Then let the stars bear witness once more." Minutes later, the two of them ascended in a prototype dropship. Sleek, human-engineered, its core powered by fragments of Korthal's old Aegis energy. As they broke through the atmosphere, the scale of the invasion became clear. Ships blotted out the sun, their formations perfectly disciplined. The Council's fleet had not come for negotiation. They had come to finish what they started. Ria's voice crackled through the comms. "Multiple destroyers inbound, 2 minutes to orbital strike range." "Deploy the Iron Wings," Marcus ordered. Hundreds of human fighter craft burst from orbital hangars, converging into tactical formations. For a brief moment, the void glittered with the defiance of mankind. Then the war resumed. The first salvo hit hard. Explosions rippled through the upper atmosphere, and the shockwaves echoed down to the oceans below. Korthal leapt from the ship mid-flight, his body igniting with spectral light. He tore through a destroyer like a blade through smoke, his claws slicing through its reactor core. "Your world burns because of me," his voice echoed through every channel. "Now it will live because of me." Marcus's ship streaked across the chaos, dodging plasma fire. "That's one way to announce you're back." The battle escalated. For every Council ship destroyed, 2 more emerged. Humanity's lines buckled but didn't break. Marcus guided strike teams through tight formations, using Korthal's position as the anchor point of their defense. Together, they turned the invasion into a storm of light and debris. But then the flagship appeared, a colossal dreadnought, dwarfing anything Marcus had ever seen. It carried the mark of the Velthor, the same species whose armada Korthal had annihilated. And at its helm was someone new. The transmission cut through the comms. A cold, steady voice filled with hatred. "Korthal. Once our weapon. Now our heretic. You will watch this world die as yours did." A figure materialized on the hologram, Veltharian, heir to the Council's high command. His armor gleamed with void steel, his gaze venomous. Korthal's reply was quiet, almost mournful. "You mistake mercy for betrayal. I learned it from them." The dreadnought charged its annihilation beam. Earth's surface sensors screamed warnings. Marcus's mind raced. There wasn't enough time to stop it conventionally. "Core," Marcus said through gritted teeth, "if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, don't." Korthal turned toward him, the fire of determination burning brighter than the stars. "You once told me humans live even when the universe buries them. Let me make sure it never does again." He soared toward the dreadnought, energy trailing like the tail of a comet. Marcus shouted after him, but the comms cut to static. Korthal reached the dreadnought's core, the beam charging beneath him. His armor began to fracture, energy bleeding from every seam. For the briefest moment he looked toward Earth, toward Marcus, and smiled. Then he released everything. The explosion consumed the sky. It rippled through orbit, tearing the dreadnought apart and collapsing the wormhole that had brought the fleet. The energy storm raged for minutes, then vanished, leaving silence in its wake. Hours later, emergency transmissions confirmed it. The enemy fleet was gone. The skies were clear. Earth had been spared. Marcus stood on the same observation deck where it all began, the sunlight returning to its rightful place over the planet. Rhea joined him quietly, her eyes wet. "Any trace of him?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "Nothing. Just silence." But as he looked toward the sky, he swore he saw it, a shimmer in the light like a shadow watching over the world. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of death and time, the galaxy's strongest predator still guarded the fragile blue world he once vowed to destroy. And for the first time in the universe's long history, the stars themselves seemed to stand watch, not in fear but in respect.